We've got those good vibrations because SummerSlam 2018 has just wrapped up. Hi everyone, my name is Marcus Stewart and welcome to Call It in the Ring, a wrestling recap and discussion show with yours truly. And this episode we are going to be talking about the biggest party of the summer, the big summer blockbuster of professional wrestling, the second biggest show on WWE's calendar, SummerSlam. It has been about an hour since the show wrapped up, and my goodness, what a show. What a show. I mean, there's a lot to get to here, so let's just not even waste time. But first, thank you for listening, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube if you're listening to that particular version. If not, you can also listen to it on iTunes at Marcus Writes About Games. You can also listen to it on Podbean. Once again, Marcus Writes About Games. So now that quick plug is out of the way, let's hop right to this show because it's a big one. And we're going to start with the pre-show matches. There was a 2-hour pre-show, 3 matches. And first up, we had Rusev and his wife Lana taking on Andrade Cien Almas and his business associate, Zelina Vega, in a mixed tag team match. This has been building up on SmackDown the last few weeks with the 40s superstars mixing it up in various combinations along with Aiden English on the side. He wanted to come to the ring before the match. He asked if he could be out there and he had a new song for them, but Rusev and Lana both said, nah. You stay back here, because if you've been following the last few weeks of SmackDown, Aiden has been unintentionally costing them matches. You know, he's had good intentions, but it has not panned out that way. So this time they said, hey, you sit back here, maybe go sing to a wall or something like that, and we'll handle our business. Unfortunately for them, they did not handle their business very well because Almas and Vegas picked up the win after Zelina got rolled up Lana, thanks to a distraction from Cien, and got her foot on the ropes just barely because Zelina Vega is a very tiny woman and I believe probably even shorter than Alexa Bliss. But this was a fine match, just kind of like a TV match. Lana did a spinneroonie, or what looked like a spinneroonie, which was, if you don't know what a spinneroonie is, that was Booker T, former superstar, current Hall of Famer and pre-show panelist. He used to do basically kind of like a breakdancing move. He would like spin on his head after he would hit one of his signature moves. So she kind of pulled out one of those. But other than that, just a totally fine TV match. Next up, for to represent 205 Live, we had the Cruiserweight Championship match between Cedric Alexander, the champion, defending against Drew Gulak. I do not watch 205 Live. I more for just the lack of time to fit it in, more so than any sort of indictment against the show itself. I think I've only seen like maybe the first 2 episodes when it first debuted, almost like back in 2016. So, I've heard that it's gotten better since, Drake Maverick, who, the former Rockstar Spud of TNA fame, took over as the general manager. And I think I've heard that Triple H kind of oversees 205 Live now. So I've heard the show's gotten better, but between Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and then pay-per-views and Life, that's just 1 hour of wrestling too many, so I do not watch it. So I don't have much story or context for this match other than what any sort of the video packages or the commentators say. So it's hard to critique this match in terms of whether or not it fits the story that they've been telling. Cedric has been champion since WrestleMania when he won it in the pre-show, and he's held it. I'm kind of surprised a little bit that he's held it this long. I don't know why I'm surprised, because he's a hell of a performer. Could use a bit more personality, but hell of a performer. And this was a good match. Gulak, I've always liked. The times like when the Cruiserweights are on Raw is the most I see them, and I liked his his whole like making 205 Live better back when he was kind of goofy. He seems a little bit more serious now. Again, I don't know what happened to change that, but even back at the Cruiserweight Classic, which, I did watch and loved, I thought he was I thought he was an interesting, like a really capable performer, and I'm happy to see that he's stuck around this long, because at the time, and even at the beginning of 205 Live, I wondered if he was a good fit for WWE, because he has all the in-ring skills as a technician, but he almost seemed too much like an indie wrestler. I'm trying to think of a better way to say that, like, in the sense that he's so wrestling focused and was really serious, and he had kind of a weird look, like, he doesn't have like a I guess the quote unquote WWE look, and to be fair, they kind of eased up on that. Like a lot of guys that quote unquote don't have that look are doing just fine in the company, but he had like a distinct indie feel. But he has really found himself in terms of like finding a personality and a really entertaining character. I was kind of hoping he would take the title here, because I've been interested in seeing what he would be like as champion, but alas, Cedric Alexander retained once again after a really good match that ended on a really cool rapid fire pinfall reversal sequence that kicked off with I think it was Cedric that hit a C4, like a standing C4, which is kind of like a how do I explain a C4? It's like alright, so like if you're familiar with The Rock and his finishing the rock bottom, it's like setting up for that, but instead of performing the rock bottom where you just pick him up and slam him, you flip backwards and take the guy with you. So you're flipping backwards and he's flipping forwards, basically. So he and then you land. That's kind of what it is. And they did that, and then but like Gulak countered that into a pin, and then they just started trading pinfalls back and forth until Cedric finally caught him with the decisive fall. And yeah, that was a good match. Nothing that will get me to watch 205 Live, unfortunately, but I'm curious to see who takes it from Cedric, because I kind of thought that he would hit a buzzsaw here with Gulak. So, good show. Good match. The next pre-show match I actually cannot speak much about, which is the Raw Tag Team title match between the Revival challenging the B-Team. B-Team, go, go, go! For the Raw Tag Team Championships, because I missed this match because I had to run out for a quick errand during the pre-show. So I thought I would be back in time. Usually the final matches are kind of almost end right before the show ends. I was like, oh, okay. Like I left as soon as the Gulak match ended. And I was like, okay, I should be back in time. It was a quick errand. And I came back and I had like 15 minutes left in the show. And I was like, okay, they got to be getting to it. And then the show started. And I was like, did they cut the match? Like, or did it happen? It was really short. And from what I have seen online, apparently the match was only about 6 minutes. And the B team retained. Sure, I guess. Whatever. Again, I can't really say anything because I haven't seen it. So we'll just leave it at that. So that brings us to the main show, which was opened by Terry Crews. We got a video of Terry Crews, the actor, who is yelling at us in the only way that he can about how awesome SummerSlam is and the greatness of wrestling. And it was a cool little intro. And our first match was the Intercontinental Championship match. Dolph Ziggler, the champion, defending against Seth Rollins, the challenger, with the twist being that to counteract Drew McIntyre, who is in Dolph Ziggler's corner, Rollins has the returning Dean Ambrose, his former Shield brother, who is back from 9 months, being on the shelf for 9 months due to injury. He made his return on Monday, and he is in his corner tonight to counteract Drew. So no more of this 2-on-1 nonsense that Seth has had to put up with. And these two had a really good back and forth match as they have had in the past. There was a cool point where Rollins hit from the top rope an inverted superplex into a Falcon's arrow, which was really, really cool looking and really kind of should have ended the match to me. Because like I've always argued that Seth's normal superplex into a Falcon's arrow combo, which is one of his signature moves, should really end matches now and again because it's such a crazy combination. So it always makes it just kind of seems ridiculous to see guys kick out of that because it's such a impactful and flashy move. And kind of like what I've talked about in the past with like Baron Corbin's Deep Six picking up the win on Raw. Like that needs to get a win now and again, let alone an inverted version of it. Because that inverted superplex looked pretty sick. And maybe Something that has to do with Dolph's, signature flopping like a fish selling. Seth got busted open somehow during the match. I'm not sure how, but he got busted pretty well towards the end of it. Dean and Drew got into it towards the end, which allowed Dean neutralized Drew by hitting a dirty deed to him outside the floor. Dean was not a factor really in this match in terms of he would get into, he played his role well in that he did what he was sent out there to do. He would stare down Drew a lot and kind of thwart Drew whenever he would try to do something underhanded, and occasionally also get in Dolph's face, but he didn't really do much of significance until the very end. And Seth Rollins picked up the win and regained the Intercontinental Championship. He hit Dolph with the old blackout curb stomp, whatever you want to call it. God's property stomp. And Seth say stomp. Annie Ambrose say stomp. If anyone remember that song? Okay. 90s kids? Okay. And no heel turn for Dean Ambrose. I was waiting for it because after the match, him and Dean are celebrating for a decent little while, and the whole time I'm waiting for Dean to spin him around and hit dirty deeds, and it doesn't happen. Doesn't mean it might not still happen, but it did not happen here. We still have not heard Dean speak. There was no promo before this, so Raw tomorrow, I'm interested to see what Dean has to say once he gets in front of a microphone. But this was a really good way to kick off the show. Our next match was the SmackDown Tag Team title match with the New Day taking on the champions, the Bludgeon Brothers. And this was another good match that I was pleasantly surprised got a lot of time. For some reason, the last few times that they've done... By the way, I have a cup of coffee because it's late at night, and I know some of you are probably wondering why I would be drinking coffee at midnight, and the answer to that is I am an insane night owl, so this honestly is my normal. So trust me, I can still go to bed right after this, but I need something to get me through this meaty party of the summer. But yeah, so like I was saying before, I've always felt like the SmackDown tag titles have kind of been shortchanged in terms of getting the time that they probably deserve or need in the last few pay-per-views since the shows have gone back to being co-branded. This broke that trend. They got a nice amount of time to tell a story. The New Day, this was Big E and Xavier Woods competing with Kofi at ringside. Good back and forth match as these two teams are capable of having. At one point, Xavier hit his finisher, the Limit Breaker, which is an amazing name as a fan of Final Fantasy, and particularly Final Fantasy VII, which is when Xavier walks the ropes and hits the elbow drop. But this time, I believe it was Eric Rowan was laid outside of the ring, and Xavier did the Limit Breaker from the ring all the way to the floor, which looked brutal. And unfortunately, was not enough or maybe it was enough because the Bludgeon Brothers got themselves intentionally disqualified because New Day was really starting to cook until Eric Rowan came in with his hammers and for once actually used those damn hammers to hit people. For a team called the Bludgeon Brothers, they don't bludgeon people as often as you would think with those mallets of theirs. But this time they did. They came in, they actually swung them the mallet side and beat up Big E and Xavier, and did they beat up Kofi? Probably, because why wouldn't Kofi, go help his buddies? Can't remember, but the point is that the brothers have been undefeated since winning the titles as a team, and I think they've been undefeated since coming back as a team, like in traditional tag team competition, according to the commentators, which I didn't really realize until they pointed it out, which is what a commentator's job is supposed to be. So I like the idea that for the first time that New Day was starting to make them sweat, and we got to see a different side of the brothers in terms of having to not rely on their brute strength, but rather an underhanded tactics, reinforcing that they are villains and not just bad guys that happen to win everything completely cleanly. So this feud is not over. This match is not over. Maybe they'll face off next month at Hell in a Cell. So we shall see. But another good match. This brought us to our third match of the night. Kevin Owens versus Braun Strowman. And the stipulation of this match is that if Braun Strowman loses in any way whatsoever, Kevin Owens wins his Money in the Bank contract. This is, I'm assuming, the blow-off to this feud, because this match barely qualifies as such because it is a complete and utter squash. Kevin comes out wearing some kind of cool looking Money in the Bank themed attire. She got a shirt that says KO in the Bank. And as soon as the bell rings, Braun is just on him. Like, just does not, which I like, because Braun is the one with everything to lose here, and he does not waste time destroying Kevin. Like, he, beats him up in the ring, takes him outside, hits a big choke slam on top of the steel ramp, which sounded sickening, and then threw Kevin back in and hit his running power slam, and that was it. The match maybe was a minute long. Maybe. I don't know. But I didn't mind this. I know some people might say, like, oh, Kevin Owens got buried, or how could they do that, or he doesn't deserve this. This didn't feel like that. This felt purely like, no, this is what they were going to go with all along. Kevin's not, like, in trouble or anything, as far as I know. Coffee. This, like I said, this made sense for Braun to not be screwing around. He's the one that has everything to lose. And it would make even more sense later on in the night. But we're not at the end of the night yet. We still got quite a bit of matches to get to. But this was a squash that worked. And it seemed to go over very well with the crowd, which is I think is a really hard thing to do for one of the biggest shows of the year, to do a squash like this. Most fans might feel like they were cheapened or robbed. But this went over really well, so well done all around. Next up, we have the SmackDown Women's Championship match, a triple threat. Carmella, the champion, defending against Becky Lynch, and the still recently returned Charlotte Flair. And before I get to the match, notice that I've been going match to match to match, and that's not I'm not skipping anything. There literally, as of now, have not been any real backstage segments or anything. There's been, video packages for some of the matches, but they've been going match, which, very NXT-like. And you'll see that pattern throughout the rest of the show. This show felt in a good way like a takeover, an NXT takeover. And just letting the performers go out there and wrestle. But yeah, back to the Women's Championship match. So originally, if you remember, the story of this match is that it was originally a one-on-one match between Carmella and Becky, but then Charlotte Flair returned from injury and was, won a match against Carmella to earn herself a spot into it. And now Becky may or may not have been frustrated at this development at her friend, because she's fought for so long. She hasn't been champions for almost 2 years now. And Charlotte, who has been champion of forever, of everything, basically, is now kind of, forced her way into what she feels is her opportunity, though she has not explicitly stated this, but you can tell that's kind of what they're going for. And once again, this match got time. They had a lot of time to go out there and tell their story. Carmella early on was purposely trying to play them against each other. There was a point where she had Becky sitting down in the ring and then slapped her in the back of the head and then pretended to get knocked down. And then, so, to make it look like that Charlotte did it. And then Becky, in a weird moment, is like, "Did you hit me behind the head?" To which I say, okay, even if she did do it on purpose, why are you getting super butthurt about it? You're in a wrestling match and your friend is one of your opponents, so she has every right to hit you from behind. So the way that they had Becky reacted is like, "Did you hit me? Are you serious? Did you hit me?" And it's like, well, yeah. I mean, she didn't, but if she did, that's what you signed up for. So that was a weird little moment. But this was a really, totally fine back and forth match. Becky had on some makeup, make her look kind of like a warrior lady. She needs to just dress up like Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn and just be done with it, because she basically looks damn near exactly like her. And in a not surprising twist, but semi-surprising, Charlotte picks up the win by hitting in a very smart finish where Becky had the match won. Like, she had Carmella in to disarm her. Carmella was about to tap. Everyone in the arena was waiting for her because Becky has been the people's choice, it seems, for the SmackDown Women's Division for months now. And then Charlotte snuck in and hit the natural selection on Becky from behind and pinned her for the win. And you could feel the crowd, just kind of the air come out of the arena, and people were not happy with this. And I'm pretty sure that was by design, because what happens post-match is that, Carmella leaves. Becky is disappointed. Charlotte is celebrating, but Becky congratulates Charlotte. They have a hug. The crowd is not happy about this, just because they wanted Becky to win. And some people probably are a little tired of Charlotte being champion. This is her 7th win, by the way, combined with, I'm assuming that counts like her one-time Divas Championship win, and then her Raw and SmackDown Women's titles. So she is tied with Trish Stratus for the most women's championship reigns of all time. Technically, she has already surpassed Trish if you count her NXT Women's Championship reign, but I'm assuming, main roster titles are the ones that they count. So, but, And as Becky and Charlotte are hugging, Becky turns around and attacks her. And the crowd goes absolutely nuts. And so does Becky. Becky beats the holy hell out of Charlotte, seemingly turning heel. I mean, that seems to be the idea because, she's throwing her around. She's screaming at her. She's upset. She takes Charlotte outside and throws her over the announce table. But much like the time that Bayley snapped on Sasha a few weeks ago on Raw, the crowd did not treat her like a heel. They treated her like she was the biggest hero in the Barclays Center, where they were chanting for her. And even after Becky left, the fans start chanting, "You deserve it," to Charlotte and booing her when she's recovering and looking all heartbroken. So, on paper, this seems like this would be a heel turn, which I predicted pretty much something like this would happen after Charlotte was added to the match. And it makes sense. I don't mind that Charlotte won the title because it serves a clear storyline purpose where Charlotte, at least in Becky's mind, Charlotte came in and stole her spotlight like she has done for years of you're the golden girl of the division. And this was my moment originally. I finally got my one-on-one championship match, and then you come back and stick your nose in my moment, and then you take the title from under me. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of putting up with this crap. So I'm very excited to see where the story goes, especially the matches, because Becky and Charlotte are two of the absolute best performers, not even just in the women's division, but just on the entire roster, man or woman. So very well done here. Again, another good match. And that trend continues because, somewhat surprisingly, we get our WWE Championship match next. Samoa Joe challenging AJ Styles for the WWE Championship. And the story of this match has been Samoa Joe calling out AJ's manhood, challenging it in terms of being a father and a husband. He has been saying that AJ prefers to live on the road, and he's so obsessed with being champion that he has allowed his family life to deteriorate because he's accusing Styles of enjoying having to leave his family for over 250, 300 days a year. AJ, of course, has denied this and has, been very upset about Joe speaking about his family in such a way. But Joe has not relented. Of course, he had the fake letter from AJ's wife, Wendy, saying that she hopes that Joe wins because then AJ can go home and be a family man. Once again, Samoa Joe is Guile from Street Fighter, but evil. He wants him to go home and be a family man. And this match started on a great note because it's, Joe and Styles get to the ring. They do the big match introductions. And right when Joe is introducing AJ, or when the announcer, is introducing AJ, Joe grabs the mic from the announcer and turns his attention to Wendy Styles, who was in attendance in the crowd, along with AJ's daughter, and starts cutting a promo on her saying that, once I hope you're watching, or I can't remember exactly what he said, but basically that, hey, once this match is over, Daddy's coming home tonight because I'm taking the title. And then AJ grabs the mic and says, the only reason that she's here is that she wants to see me kick your ass. So already they're off on a good start here. Like, people are already jazzed for this match because it's Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles for the first time ever in a WWE ring. Two guys that have had countless matches against each other in other promotions, particularly in TNA. As a fan, personally, of someone that was a big fan of TNA for a while, it was really cool to finally see these two square off on the second biggest show for the WWE Championship, no less. Who would have thought that 10 years ago? And the crowd, of course, remember, we got like a TNA chant at the beginning of the match, which sounds weird now. That chant would have meant more a decade ago. Maybe not so much the current TNA, but this match started a little slow, and not in a bad way. I don't mind matches that start slow, but slow in the sense of, it didn't fit the story of like AJ being, let me just not fair. So on one hand, maybe it didn't fit the story of like the story of this super personal issue. So to have that and to start with kind of basic, chain wrestling seems weird, but I guess they did cover their butts, so to speak, on that, because AJ has stated that he is trying to keep his cool. Like, he is furious that Joe is saying these things. And AJ has a known temper, as has been, exploited by Shinsuke Nakamura in his previous feud. But he is actively trying to keep his composure. So I guess that actually makes the slower ending better, that AJ's trying to keep himself composed. But even with the slow ending, they picked it up and the match got really, really good. They went out there and it felt like, two guys that knew each other like the back of their hands. Like, these two can have a good match in their sleep at this point, I would imagine. Even though they haven't faced each other in a couple years now. At one point, AJ hit the Styles Clash, like a sloppy Styles Clash, but then again, you tried to get up a 300-pound Samoan man upside down and hit a move like that, but he pulled it off mostly. We got to see AJ bust out the old inverted flip DDT thing that he doesn't do all that often, mainly because it's a really hard move to pull off, but he did it flawlessly here. Samoa Joe went for the Muscle Buster. Did not get it, of course, because I guess the Muscle Buster's banned. Or at least probably since the whole Tyson Kidd thing. But he went for it. At one point, I think it was after the AJ escaped the Muscle Buster, but he's still on the top rope. Joe hits like a sick kick, like he does his Enziguri kick, and AJ just topples to the floor, but the kick sounded like a gunshot. And AJ just, between the sound of the kick and the way AJ just like plummeted to the floor, the crowd gasped on that. Like, I call him out because that was a sick looking strike there. And then at some point AJ got busted open, so this is our second Crimson Mask, so to speak, though it didn't get that bad, but he got busted at some point. I don't know if it was the kick or when Joe sent him into the stairs immediately afterwards, but they're fighting outside the ring. They head over to the announce table. And then Joe grabs the mic again and starts taunting Wendy Styles, saying that, I know I said that Daddy was going to come home tonight. Well, turns out that's not going to happen because after I'm through with him, he's not going to be going anywhere or something like that. And then he says, but I can be your new daddy. And the crowd, it's just like, oh, and then that is enough for AJ, who absolutely snaps. He charges Joe on top of the announce table and pretty much tackles him off the table through the barricade where the timekeeper's area is, and just starts beating the crap out of him. He starts beating up the officials that are around the ring that are trying to restrain him. And then he grabs a chair as Joe is trying to crawl away and just nails Joe with the chair, drawing a disqualification. The match ends. AJ Styles retains the title by disqualification, even though Joe won the match, because of course a championship cannot change hands on disqualification. AJ is seeing red at this point and just starts unloading on Joe with these chair shots. A bunch of the backstage people and agents come out to try to restrain AJ. And then eventually AJ's wife kind of calls him over. And AJ goes outside into the crowd to meet his wife. And they have a genuinely touching moment where, like, the fans were kind of split on this ending because the match was getting really awesome at this point, or it had been really good. And so it's like, oh man, like, but again, it fit the ending because Joe, I guess whatever his plan is, completely backfired, because not only did he not win a title, but then he got his ass kicked afterwards. And but it this clearly isn't over, and we'll almost assuredly we'll get a Hell in a Cell rematch next month at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, which kind of fits the extremely personal nature of this feud. Wendy Styles calls AJ over, and they have a touching moment where Wendy, is telling AJ to calm down and that it's okay. AJ, and then, like, the daughter said something, this is one of those things where, like, unscripted moments in wrestling can be some of the best things, where, like, I'm assuming that, of course, like, whatever Wendy was said may have been scripted, or maybe not, like, scripted word for word, but, the general, like, hey, tell him to calm down or whatever. But then the daughter said, I couldn't catch all of it, but something like, Daddy, did you do something or something? I might be wrong, but she said something that I thought added so much to the moment, where, like, AJ kind of realizes the place that he went to, and he apologizes to his wife, and he grabs his daughter, and then everyone in the arena starts cheering for AJ, which is very impressive given how jaded the New York fans can be, for them to genuinely, because it seemed like they were a little like, oh, this was great, but also kind of like, ah, man, like I don't want to say like maybe outright booing Styles when he was cheering Joe, but some of them were like, ah, man, and maybe they would think this was a cheesy moment, but I think because it's his real wife and kid, it was the point when he picks up his daughter that the crowd completely got on AJ's side, and then he leaves with his family and everyone's clapping and cheering. So it worked out really well. There was and like I said, yeah, we'll likely get a rematch out of this next month at Hell in a Cell. But again, this was what are we up to now? 4 really good matches in a row. And then the Braun and Kevin Owens match was a totally fine squash that served a larger purpose. So SummerSlam is on a roll right now, if you haven't noticed. Next, we have our first non-wrestling segment of the night, and that is Elias. He is on the stage. As always, he is going to serenade us with his music. He brags about his album. And then when he goes to start strumming, he breaks his guitar, like the neck of the guitar just snaps in half. And the crowd, of course, gives him shit for it. They start chanting, you fucked up, you fucked up. I'm assuming that was on purpose. And Elias, for a good while, kind of stares at the broken guitar in his hand, and then slowly kind of realizes what's happened. And then he just quietly has a little fit where he just throws the guitar up the ramp, and he gets really mad, and he just leaves. Yeah, so that happened. This leads to our second segment, where we see The Miz making his way to the ring for his match. And he runs into the B team, which I was like, yes, this had to happen. And the Miz doesn't congratulate them or anything. He, being typical Miz, he brags about, hey, maybe if Brian had listened to me back when we were in NXT, he'd be winners like you two. And hey, how about for old time's sake, you guys go get my limo ready and do all my crap, and we can hang out after the show. The B team are like, no, we're actually not here for that. We're here to cheer for Brian. We hope Brian punches you out. And that B team, apparently, the B and B team stands for Daniel Bryan. And they have a great line where they say that they are going to have their own reality show called Total Fellas. At which point I thought, well, it's got to star Sheamus, right? But except since it's starring the B team, they got to put the B in the title. So the real title is going to be Total Bellas, which, I'm not doing it justice with me saying it, but their delivery was fantastic. They act like, hey, that's a great idea, right? And I just love that. That's such a great little dumb joke. And then Miz sells it perfectly where he's just looking at them like, are you serious? And they just have those hilarious, just goofy smiles on their faces like they're geniuses. And Miz heads to the ring for his long awaited match against Daniel Bryan. Easily probably the best built up match on the card. WWE, said 8 years in the making, which, yeah, I guess so. I mean, they've fought numerous times in the past before, but if nothing else, it was definitely almost 2 years in the making it, because it's kind of more based on their recent history since their Talking Smack promo in the fall of 2016, but if you need a recap for this story, Miz was Daniel Bryan's pro in the original NXT when Bryan debuted in the company in 2010. They did not get along at all because they're basically oil and water. Bryan is the indie darling who is one of the best technical wrestlers in the world. Miz was the reality star that made it big in WWE and was a loudmouth, and the fans hated. And you could not put two more disparate personalities together. And since then, both have gone on to great heights. Both have won everything basically in the company. They both main event at WrestleMania, but then Bryan had to retire because of injury and was for about 3 years on the shelf. He became SmackDown general manager, and then Miz, during the time that Bryan was retired, would always mock him, started stealing his moves in the ring. And at the time, because Bryan's injury was supposed to be career ending, so until this year when he was cleared to wrestle, it drove a lot of fans nuts because Bryan and Miz were interacting and having just genius just moments. And Miz you just wanted to see Bryan beat the crap out of Miz, but you knew that he couldn't wrestle because of his injury. So you're like, you guys are teasing the hell out of this, but you can't pay it off with a match. Until Bryan got cleared to wrestle earlier this year, which no one expected. And as soon as Bryan stepped back into the ring, everyone was like, he's got to get Miz now. He's got to get Miz. And now we have got Miz. So finally, gonna put up or shut up. Who is the better of the two? This match was really, really good. Bryan and Miz have amazing chemistry in the ring, not just on promos or on the mic. They told a good story with Miz trying to out wrestle Bryan, like he was stealing his signature moves, like he does Bryan's surfboard against him. He starts using like cravats and all these technical submissions to try to show that, because Bryan would always criticize Miz's wrestling ability. So he's like taunting him. It's like, oh, how about I use a cravat? Since you're a real wrestler, huh? And he's doing all these. The Miz, Bryan counters by, breaking out of these moves because he's the master. And just going to town, even in the beginning of the match, because the thing that Bryan used to say back around the time when he was still retired was that all he wants to do is punch Miz in the face, but he can't because he's the general manager. And, general managers cannot do such things. And as soon as the match started, he just kept trying to punch Miz in the face. Like, that's all he kept trying to do. Like, he had his fist up, and he's like, I've been waiting a long time to do this. And then he finally lands that first punch, and we're like, all right, here we go. This was a long match. And Maurice was at ringside. And the match ended when, at one point, they fight outside. They fight near Maurice. Bryan gets taken down. And then Miz goes to, like, greet Maurice and talk to her, and then Maurice slips him a foreign object, and then Bryan gets back into the ring and tries to hit the flying goat, which is of course his suicide dive to the ropes, and then Miz decks him with what turns out to be a pair of brass knuckles. He's been watching his William Regal tapes. He hit him with the power of the punch, which knocks Bryan out, allowing Miz to get the win. The very, very tainted win. And Miz, of course, celebrates like a maniac because he, in his mind, he has proven his point that he is better than Daniel Bryan. He and Maurice escape into the night like thieves, and this probably isn't over. I would assume, maybe, but this was a really good match, and it delivered in terms of it had years and years of build up that could have collapsed under the weight of all of that expectation, and it didn't. And it ended in a satisfying way, in a fitting way. Like, if Miz was going to win, he needed to win in a total dirtbag way, and that is exactly what he did. So well done. Another really good match on this very good show. Next up, we had Finn Balor taking on Constable Baron Corbin. This was easily the weakest match of the night, and at least coming into the show, this was probably the match I would argue that had the least, or like did not just really need to be on the show. Like, it felt like complete fat that needed to be trimmed, but it all worked out because Corbin was not facing Finn Balor, the man. He was facing Finn Balor, the Demon King, for the first time in nearly a year. Because when was the last time Finn transformed into the Demon? I believe it was not Survivor Series, but the October pay-per-view. It was it was TLC. It was TLC, that's right. When he faced AJ Styles. It's been a long time since we've seen the Demon. And what I love about this was that it was not broadcast beforehand in any way whatsoever. It was like, so if you're listening to this, because I imagine I have some more casual wrestling fans, and if you do listen and you're such a fan, I appreciate that you're using me as your source to learn about the wonders of professional wrestling. But Finn Balor, a big aspect of his character is that he has an alter ego called the Demon. And the Demon is basically when he puts on this very elaborate body paint that looks freaking awesome. It usually resembles like teeth, like giant jaws from his like chest to his chin. So when you look at him, it looks like it almost looks like, if you're familiar with Venom from Spider-Man, like imagine the symbiote on his body. That's often what the paint kind of looks like these monstrous jaws taking over his body. And it's his alter ego where he, every now and again, like once in a blue moon, he puts it on. He has a completely different entrance in terms of the presentation. Like, it's the same music, but, it's got a different, like, graphics, and the lighting gets all red. There's smoke. He wears this different outfit with, like, this hat and these, like, streamer things. His mannerisms change, or he's, like, crawling to the ring. Like, the idea is that he transforms into this form when it's a feud that is really personal or as some big challenge. And usually at least back when he was in NXT, it was always a surprise when he did it. And that, since he only does it once in a while, that's what keeps it special. And he pretty much always wins. Like, he's only lost one time as the Demon, and that was back in NXT against Samoa Joe. But every other time he's done it for the last few years, he always wins. So it's like a power-up. It's like him going Super Saiyan, basically. And when he came to the main roster in 2016, WWE had this annoying tendency to kind of like broadcast the Demon ahead of time and sort of like either have him announce that he would be the Demon at the pay-per-view he would do it, or like promoting it, which always bugged me because in NXT it was an organic thing where you had no idea if he would do it or not. So when it did happen, you're like, oh snap, there it is. And that's what they did here, where there was no indication that Finn would be the Demon. The feud itself really didn't call for it, but I could argue that Finn was so tired of Corbin's crap that, like, no, he doesn't really need the Demon to beat Corbin. In fact, he's proven to not need it because he's beaten Corbin as normal Finn before, but I think he wanted to put the exclamation on this feud and just like, there's no coming back from this. He comes out, big Demon entrance. It's one of my favorite entrances in all of wrestling. It's very Undertaker-ish in terms of its just over the topness and the spectacle of it. Corbin freaks out. He's like yelling at the ref that he did not sign up to wrestle the Demon. And it's, the match itself is a complete squash. Like, it's a little longer than like Braun Strowman crushing Kevin Owens earlier in the night, but it's Finn just not giving Baron an inch. Like, Corbin got in nothing. I don't think he even touched Balor. He, like, as soon as the bell rings, Finn rushes him, drop kick, sling blades, sends him outside, flip dive, his soccer kicks, just like, he is like lightning, just like boom, bing, 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 just hitting him all over the place. Corbin is just all out of sorts, coup de grace, 1, 2, 3, exactly what that needed to be, and exactly what the Demon is supposed to be, because like I said, the Demon is Finn's power-up, and Corbin could barely handle normal Finn, so it makes perfect sense that Demon Finn is way too much for him. Corbin looked like a Street Fighter newcomer who accidentally got paired up with an Evo finalist and got slaughtered. And they somehow managed to take the least interesting match and did the one thing that would make it worth watching, and they kept it short in a way that made sense. So I am extremely happy with that whole thing. And if you've not seen Demon Finn Balor, go look it up, because it really is one of the coolest kind of characters and personas in wrestling right now. It's great. Daniel Bryan is backstage with his wife, Brie Bella. I think I forgot to mention that Brie Bella and Nikki were shown in one backstage segment that I think I overlooked, where they were kind of talking about Evolution and how they may or may not wrestle, but they were there to watch Ronda Rousey compete earlier in the night, so they kind of established that they were there. But yeah, Bryan is with Brie backstage, and Bryan is very, very upset that he lost to Miz, because he feels that proves that Miz proved his point about his return being a bust, and that he needed to win that match. Brie consoles Bryan, saying that, hey, you fought for 3 years to get back into the ring, and you've done that, so don't give up on your dreams, because you've already proven that if you believe, you can make anything happen. So, just a quick little segment. Next up, we have our United States Championship. Jeff Hardy, the former champion, challenging the current champion, Shinsuke Nakamura, the King of Strong Style. Kind of this match feels weird, because this entire feud, or most of it, has been built almost entirely on Jeff Hardy versus Randy Orton, with Nakamura kind of on the side. So it's kind of taken away the personal issue between these two, because this may as well be Jeff versus Randy. But this match was okay. It was fine. There was a cute bit in the beginning where Jeff imitates Nakamura's mannerisms and his, come on taunt. Jeff screwed up by so he hit the Swanton on Nakamura. Nakamura grabs the ropes before he can be pinned and rolls outside of the ring onto the apron. Jeff decides that would be a great time to hit the Swanton again, this time outside and onto the apron. Nakamura moves, sending Jeff crashing down on the hardest part of the ring. As the commentators like to always remind us, Jeff took one chance too many there, allowing Nakamura to capitalize and throw him back into the ring and hit the Kinshasa for the 1, 2, 3. Surprisingly clean win. I was expecting some shenanigans. I mean, Nakamura went for the low blow during the match, but it did not work. But I thought if Nakamura was going to cheat, then assuredly Randy would distract him, even with his entrant, the old play his music and then distract Jeff because he's looking at the ramp expecting Randy to come out, but nothing at all. Nakamura just won. So that was a little weird. But then even weirder is that after the match, Nakamura leaves, Jeff is still down, and then Randy comes out. And of course now we're like, oh, here we go. Randy's going to try to rip his ear off again or something. And as Randy makes his way to the ring, he stops at the bottom of the ramp, and then he decides to leave. It kind of looks like he's thinking about it, and then he turns right back around and then exits, and nothing happens. Jeff recovers after he leaves. I don't know what that means. It's like the voices in Randy's head said, not tonight. So I'm curious to see where that goes. It was kind of a almost, somewhat anticlimactic ending to that match, but we'll see where that goes, I guess. This brought us to our Raw Women's Championship match. Ronda Rousey, Rowdy Ronda Rousey, the baddest woman on the planet, taking on the Raw Women's Champion, Alexa Bliss. This is one of the matches I've also been really looking forward to because the story has been really good. Of course, this started at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view when Ronda Rousey challenged Nia Jax for the Raw Women's Championship, but Alexa Bliss, who won the Women's Money in the Bank match earlier in the night, cashed in her briefcase during the match and won the title from Nia Jax, and then attacked Nia and Ronda, and then since then has been just running down Ronda, calling her an overhyped rookie, and Ronda snapping and beating the absolute crap out of Alexa the night after Money in the Bank, which caused her to get suspended by General Manager Kurt Angle for 3 weeks, or 30 days actually, I'm sorry. And then Ronda having to serve that sentence, but then coming back to again beat the crap out of Alexa Bliss. And Alexa just been trying to hide, but still talking a lot of crap to Ronda, saying that she, just saying she doesn't deserve what she's getting, and that she'll always just be an overhyped rookie, and she'll never beat the goddess, Alexa Bliss. And once again, Ronda Rousey proves that she fits in WWE. She has taken to this really well because, well, first of all, so during the entrances, the first person we see is Natalya. Natalya makes her return. Of course, 1 week, or has it even been a week? Roughly a week since the passing of her father, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, one half of the Hart Foundation, as I talked about on my Raw review. Makes her return. She's wearing her father's old jacket, his old Hart Foundation jacket, and she looks, she looked like she was kind of having a little bit of trouble holding it together, but the crowd gives her a really nice ovation. Everyone knows, of course, what you can't imagine what she's going through. She's barely a week after her father passed, so they gave her a nice welcome, which I thought was nice. And this match, Alexa tries to run from Ronda. Alexa tries to run from Ronda. And I don't blame her, because Ronda was wearing this face paint that made her look even more terrifying than she normally does. When Ronda made her entrance, she power walked to the ring, and it looked scary. It was like this, almost like the Terminator coming at you with just this death stare, which is great because she has been waiting a long time to finally take that title from Alexa. Alexa wants nothing to do with this. She tries to run. Ronda's just like, are you kidding me? And then she offers to turn her back and let Alexa back in the ring. And what I loved about this match is how vocal Ronda was. She's yelling at Alexa to I can show you how to be a real champion. I'll give you the ring. She offers to let Alexa just come back in. Alexa's like, nah. Ronda turns her back and is like, I'll give you a free shot. She sits down Indian style, like she's Aleister Black, and even closes her eyes and covers her eyes with her hands. And Alexa very tepidly steps back into the ring and applies a chin lock, and Ronda just completely no-sells it, are you serious? That's what you're gonna do? And again, she's just taunting Alexa the whole time. She lifts her up while Alexa has the chin lock applied, and then does that spinning Samoan drop thing that she does that looks just wicked, because the way she snaps that just looks brutal, just whiplash on the person taking it. And then she's just yelling at her, Alexa slaps her or hits her in the face. Ronda's like, are you kidding? That's what you're gonna do? And is beating her in the corner and yelling about how we're gonna have a new Raw Women's Champ. She's yelling to the crowd if they're ready to see a new champion. And I thought that Ronda was pretty brilliant, honestly, in this match. And much like Finn Balor and Braun Strowman, Ronda Rousey joined the Squash Club and just annihilated Alexa and picked up the win. She beat her with the was it beat her with the armbar or an arm trap? Oh no, it was the armbar. Like, and the final few moments of the match were absolutely brutal in a very satisfying way, where she had Alexa pinned, like just completely mounted, and was just manipulating her arm in all these really sick ways, and Alexa screaming like a little kid, and Ronda's just toying with her arm at this point before finally putting in the armbar, and Alexa is tapping out screaming like a baby. And we have a new and extremely dominant Raw Women's Champion. The Bellas, who are at ringside, coming to the ring. And there was a lot of people thought they were going to interfere, because I've heard rumors, or there's apparently a rumor that Nikki Bella is going to wrestle Ronda Rousey at the Evolution pay-per-view, which that seems like a matchup that should really only go one way, and that's Nikki getting completely destroyed. So I don't know. Why would I want to see Nikki Bella wrestle Ronda Rousey? That's a weird match, but if that's true, they certainly kind of planted the seeds with that here just by having them interact with her. But but Ronda is really happy. She celebrates. She's like making out with her husband at ringside, and yeah, who the hell beats her for that title? That's all I got. That's my only question is, does she have to turn heel at this point or some point down the line? Because I feel like it seems like the only real trajectory for her is to run into Charlotte at WrestleMania next year in what very well could be the main event of WrestleMania next year. Excuse me. So does she hold the title till then and defend it against her? Or will it just be a match? I assume it's going to be a title match if it's going to close the show. So one of them will have to be champion. So presumably Ronda, we'll say for now. I mean, Charlotte's also a champion at the moment. Maybe they'll both be champion and hold it. Maybe it'll be a champion versus champion match. Who knows? But yeah, I'm curious to see how Ronda goes for the next few months in terms of like having essentially a Brock Lesnar-ish character that is a good guy. That's very hard to do, to have someone that dominant be good, because it's just kind of easier to have someone like that be a villain, because it's easier to tell the story of people trying to take her down, and like who can stop her, as opposed to the same thing, but she's also I don't know, really friendly. I don't know. There's something about having that Goliath to slay that's evil rather than a good guy giant, I guess. It's late at night. I'm having trouble articulating this, so I hope you understand what I was trying to say there. Yeah, I'm totally okay with this. Some might think that Ronda was rushed to this. Sorta, kinda, but she's totally delivers in the ring, and she's believable, and she's a huge star, and that's how you get eyeballs on the division. So we'll see who she defends against next month, or at Evolution, what the plans is for her. But fun match. This brings us to our main event of the night. Brock Lesnar defending the Universal Championship against Roman Reigns. This is the fourth meeting of these two. They have a 3-year history with each other. Their first match was at WrestleMania 31 in the main event in 2015, where, of course, this was for the WWE Championship, and neither man won, because that's when Seth Rollins famously cashed in his Money in the Bank during the match and snuck away with the title. They had their second one-on-one match earlier this year at WrestleMania 34 in the main event, where Roman lost. They had their third match at the Greatest Royal Rumble a few weeks later in the cage match, where Roman lost after he speared Brock through the cage, though he technically won. And that's kind of been Roman's point of contention, is that he feels he's the uncrowned champion because the ref made a bad call, which he did. And, he's been calling out Brock for being lazy and not showing up to like a real world champion, and, taking the world champion hostage, so to speak, and caring more about UFC, because Brock's going to be fighting in the UFC against what's his name? I don't watch UFC. Some guy, Cormier. He's the champion. If you watch UFC, you probably know who I'm talking about. But Brock is slated to face him in the next couple months. So, the idea is that Brock wants to be a 2-sport champion, and Paul Heyman's really pushing this, like, oh, Brock will be the greatest if he can imagine if he's the Universal Champion and the UFC Champion. That'll be great. But Brock is like, nah, I'm the big dog. I'm bringing the belt back to Raw full time. And, they come out. And then before the match can get underway, Braun Strowman comes out. And everyone loses their damn mind, including me. He brings, of course, his Money in the Bank briefcase. He steps into the ring. Both Brock and Roman are kind of like, oh crap, I think we know what's going on here. And Braun does what I had hoped he would do since he won that briefcase, is that he does not want to cash in like everyone else, because in terms of like when the champion is all but dead, defeated, tired, what have you, and then cashing in and basically stealing the title from them without any effort. He says that's the coward's way out, and he doesn't need to do that because he's a monster, which he is absolutely right. And he says that he is going to tell them straight up to their faces that he is cashing in tonight. And at first, I thought he was going to cash in and make it a triple threat, and I think a lot of people assume that. But he actually says is that he is going to be standing at ringside, and he is going to watch the match, and he does not care who wins, because after the match, he will be cashing in his briefcase, and the winner will be immediately facing him for the title. So that's what he meant, and I would have liked it to be a triple threat, but I was totally fine with that, because that's such a cool and unique way to do Money in the Bank, because we see almost all of the Money in the Bank cash-ins have been what Braun had described, of like, champions down, the Money in the Bank holder comes out, hits one move maybe, and then wins the title. The only people that have ever cashed in, like, quote-unquote fairly in terms of giving the champion notice has been Rob Van Dam and John Cena, and I guess Braun Strowman, sort of. You'll understand what I mean very shortly. So the match begins, and Brock is somewhat distracted by Braun, which allows Roman to immediately Superman punch the crap out of him, and then he just stays on Brock. Brock is completely caught off guard, and as soon as he turns around, he gets speared, and then speared again, and then a third spear hits, and I'm thinking, oh my god, like Roman is about to pull a Goldberg and beat Brock in about a minute or so, which actually would have made sense because Brock was caught off guard by the whole Braun situation, and Roman very wisely took advantage of this. But on the third spear, Brock grabs Roman and locks him into a, I don't know what the hold is exactly, but basically some sort of like sleeper hold as he's on the ground. But Roman manages to power out, and they start having their normal hard-hitting match. Though this is a better match than their last two. Like, it's definitely their second best match. And I think that's, cause it didn't go on too long and become just a finisher spam fest. Like, there was a little bit of that, but it just felt better paced. And again, they didn't drag it out. Brock hit his German suplexes. I don't think he hit Roman with an F5 at all, unless I'm forgetting. But now that I'm thinking about it, like, I don't think he ever did the F5. He didn't get a chance to. And the reason for that is that at one point, so Braun is standing on the side of the ring that the ramp is, just watching. And Roman goes to spear Brock again, but Brock sidesteps him, sending Roman flying through the ring. And he basically suicide dives Braun. And Braun is down, and Brock goes out and starts beating up Braun. He lifts him up. He F5s him on the floor. Roman is still down. He grabs his briefcase and beats him with the briefcase before throwing it all the way up to the entrance of the ramp. And then he grabs a chair and starts just wearing Braun out with this chair, which is smart on Brock's part. Is like, I know I'm going to have to face this guy immediately after Roman if I win, so why not just beat him up now and get him, at least soften him up? And so I thought that was a logical thinking in terms of the planning and the storytelling. And what happened is that Brock was so focused on Braun, which I guess I don't blame him, that when he got back in the ring, he turns around and gets speared out of his boots. And the fourth spear is enough for Roman to finally pin Brock Lesnar and become the brand new Universal Champion. After 3 years of trying to beat Brock Lesnar, he finally did it here. This is Roman Reigns' crowning achievement, even though this is his 4th World Championship win overall, and he's one of those title wins came in the main event of WrestleMania, which is kind of the pinnacle of crowning achievements, but this is the real crowning achievement. Anyways, Braun does not cash in because he is still very much hurt after the assault from Lesnar, and Reigns celebrates and they go off the air. So they managed to kind of find a logical way to get out of having Braun cash in. I would have liked to see Braun cash in and walk out with the title. That would have been the cherry on top of what was a very, very good SummerSlam. There was nothing bad here at all. And I wish I was less surprised by that, but the WWE's bigger shows like Mania and this that go on for a very long time, they have all run into the issue of just burning out from fatigue and just cramming too much and making the shows too long. But I think, like I said in the beginning of the show, this felt so NXT-like, and it was match after match after match without much filler or nonsense in between. And all the matches had enough time to tell a story. And it seems like they just told the roster to just go out there and just wrestle, just do your thing. And given that the WWE roster is probably the best roster they've ever had in terms of pure in-ring ability, that's a good thing that's a good edict to issue to your superstars. Go out there, wrestle a match, knock them dead, and don't overthink things. And the most involved match in terms of storytelling stuff was probably the main event, and it made perfect sense of Braun, that fits Braun's character for he wants to beat them face to face because he doesn't need to sneak up on people, and it makes sense for Brock to try to take him out preemptively, and it wound up costing Brock. So yeah, I'm surprised. And I can't compare it to NXT TakeOver because I actually have not had a chance to watch it yet. I was not available to watch it last night, so I have to watch it tomorrow or sometime in the coming week when I find time. So I can't compare directly which was better, but I'm very happy with SummerSlam. It felt very well paced. I didn't feel any of the fatigue that I normally feel when I'm watching WrestleMania. And I'm happy. I'm very, very happy with how the show went. I have very little complaints, to be honest with you, which is the best feeling you can actually absolutely have as a wrestling fan, especially nowadays in WWE. So well done. I'm excited to see both Raw and SmackDown and see the fallout from this show. And I'm curious to see what you guys thought of it. So please let me know, comment. Let me know what you thought about this SummerSlam. Once again, subscribe and listen on iTunes and Podbean. I almost forgot my other platform that this is on. It's getting late. It is now just past 1 a.m. over here in sunny Florida. Thanks for listening. Once again, I'm going to wrap this up so I can get some shut-eye. But yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter and let me know what you thought about the show, I am at MarcusStewart7. Be sure to check out my other videos if you're listening to this on YouTube. I do also video game stuff. I have a video game show called Carving Gaming Rushmores. I've also put up a gaming discussion called Game Chat. I put up the first episode talking about the IGN plagiarism controversy. So if you're into video games, I'd appreciate it if you check those out and let me know what you think. And I'll be back Tuesday with a new Call in the Ring talking about Monday Night Raw and all the backlash from tonight's show. So until next time, wrestling fans, thanks for listening, and I will see you soon. Have a good night.